The night my husband folded my clothes with shaking hands and placed them gently back into the drawer, I knew my life had split in two. He did not scream. He did not accuse. He did not ask questions. He simply looked at me like a man who had been wounded so deeply that anger no longer knew where to land. I had come home smelling like another man. My body still carried the heat of betrayal, and my heart was racing with fear and shame. When his eyes met mine, soft and broken instead of furious, something inside me collapsed. That was the moment I understood that love does not always leave when it is betrayed. Sometimes it stays, bleeding quietly. Before we begin, I want to say thank you to everyone who has already subscribed to this channel. Your support means more than you know. And to all our new and returning viewers who are yet to subscribe, thank you for being here. I cannot wait for you to hit that subscribe button, because it serves as the fuel and energy that keeps powering this channel forward. Please remember to engage and share your thoughts in the comments immediately after this hook. Your voices matter here. Now, let me tell you how I became the woman who hurt her husband the worst way possible. My name is Claire. I am an American white woman in my early 30s, living in a quiet suburban neighborhood in the Midwest. I am married to a man named Ethan, a man who loved me with a steadiness I once mistook for boredom. The other man in this story is Ryan, someone who entered my life when I was already emotionally drifting, even though I refused to admit it at the time. I used to believe that infidelity began with a decision. I know now that it begins with a feeling that goes unattended. My life looked good from the outside. I lived in a clean 2-story house with white siding and a porch that faced a tree-lined street. I had a husband who worked hard, paid the bills on time, and kissed my forehead before leaving for work every morning. I wore a wedding ring that never left my finger. People thought I was lucky. In many ways, I was. Ethan and I had been married for 7 years. In the beginning, our love had been loud and hungry. We stayed up late talking about dreams, children, and places we wanted to visit together. Over time, life grew heavier. His job demanded more hours. My own career plateaued, leaving me restless and unsure of myself. We still shared a bed, but silence had slowly replaced curiosity. I told myself this was normal. I told myself all marriages went quiet eventually. What I did not tell him was how invisible I felt. Most days, Ethan came home tired. He would kiss my cheek, ask how my day went, and sit on the couch with his phone or laptop. He loved me, but he loved me quietly. I wanted to be seen loudly. I wanted someone to notice the way my dress fit differently after I started going to the gym. I wanted someone to ask how I was really doing and wait for the answer. That is where Ryan entered my life. Ryan worked at the same gym I started going to after work. He was not my trainer, but he was always there. He smiled easily. He listened when I spoke. He made eye contact in a way that felt intentional. At first, it felt harmless. Compliments about my progress. Casual conversations about music and weekend plans. He remembered small details about me, and each time he did, it felt like a light turning on inside my chest. I told myself it was innocent. I told myself I was allowed to have friends. What I did not admit was how I lingered after workouts, hoping he would be there. I noticed how my heart beat faster when he stood too close. I felt something waking up in me that had been asleep for too long. At home, Ethan remained the same. Kind. Steady. Predictable. The contrast between them grew louder in my mind. The first boundary I crossed was emotional. I began sharing parts of myself that belonged to my marriage. My frustrations. My doubts. My longing to feel desired again. Ryan listened without judgment. He made me feel understood. Each conversation pulled me further away from the woman I used to be. I started hiding my phone. I smiled at messages I should not have been receiving. I told myself it was not cheating because there was no touch. That lie did not last long. The night everything shifted, it was raining hard. Ethan was working late, something that had become normal. Ryan asked if I wanted to grab a drink nearby. I hesitated. I knew the answer I should give. Instead, I chose the answer that felt exciting. I justified it by telling myself it was only one drink. I dressed carefully, choosing something that made me feel wanted. That bar was dimly lit and loud enough to drown out my conscience. We sat close. His knee brushed mine. When he looked at me, I felt powerful and weak at the same time. I drank more than I should have. The line between right and wrong blurred quickly. When his hand rested on my lower back, I did not move away. I wish I could say I stopped it there. The first kiss happened outside, under the rain, like something pulled from a romantic movie I did not belong in. It was urgent and wrong, and I let it happen anyway. In that moment, I stopped thinking about my husband entirely. I chose desire over loyalty. I chose myself over my vows. I went home late that night. Ethan was already asleep. I stood in the shower longer than necessary, trying to wash away the guilt that clung to my skin. I stared at my reflection and barely recognized the woman looking back at me. I told myself it was a mistake. I promised myself it would not happen again. But once a line is crossed, it becomes easier to cross it again. The affair grew quickly, fueled by secrecy and fantasy. Ryan made me feel alive. He made me feel chosen. I began to resent Ethan for things that were never his fault. His consistency irritated me. His trust felt heavy. I was living two lives, and the weight of it started to show. I became distant at home. I avoided eye contact. I flinched when Ethan touched me, not because I did not love him, but because I could not face what I was becoming. Guilt followed me everywhere. At the same time, I felt addicted to the attention. I told myself I deserved happiness, even if it came at someone else's expense. The first sign that something was wrong came one evening when Ethan asked me if everything was okay. His voice was calm, but his eyes searched my face. I lied easily. That terrified me more than anything else. That night, as he slept beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I knew I was standing at the edge of something irreversible. I knew I was hurting the man who had never hurt me. Still, I did not stop. I did not know then that he was already beginning to see the truth. I did not know that love, when wounded, changes shape instead of disappearing. And I had no idea how deeply my choices were about to break us both. By the time I realized I was no longer in control of the situation, the affair had already woven itself into my daily life. It was no longer something that happened occasionally. It had become something I planned around. I scheduled my days carefully, moving pieces of my life like chess pieces, making sure no one saw the full board. The deception did not feel dramatic. It felt calculated, and that scared me. I woke up every morning beside Ethan with a familiar weight pressing against my chest. He still reached for me in his sleep. His arms still wrapped around my waist as if I were safe, as if I had not already left him in ways that mattered. I learned how to smile while feeling hollow. I learned how to answer his questions without revealing the truth. The more I lied, the easier it became to do it without shaking. Ryan became my escape and my poison at the same time. What I thought was passion slowly turned into dependence. He texted constantly, needing reassurance, needing my attention. At first, I loved that. It made me feel important. Over time, it began to feel suffocating. I could not step away without consequences. If I did not respond quickly, he questioned me. If I mentioned my husband, his mood changed. The fantasy started to crack, revealing something darker underneath. Still, I stayed. We met in places where no one would recognize us. Parking lots, empty apartments, hotel rooms that smelled like someone else's soap. Every time I crossed another line, I told myself it would be the last time. Every time, I broke that promise. I gave my body to a man who did not have to earn my trust, while the man who had earned everything slept alone beside me. At home, Ethan grew quieter. He stopped asking as many questions. He stopped trying to fix the distance between us. I noticed small changes. He stayed up later. He folded the laundry more often. He cooked meals I barely touched. His love did not grow louder in response to my withdrawal. It grew softer, and that somehow hurt more. One evening, I came home later than usual. My phone was nearly dead, and my mind was still tangled in another life. Ethan was sitting at the kitchen table when I walked in. He looked tired, not angry. That expression unsettled me more than shouting ever could have. He asked me if I was happy. The question felt like a blade. I told him yes without hesitation. The lie slipped out smoothly, practiced. He nodded slowly and looked down at his hands. That moment should have been my wake-up call. Instead, I went to bed and turned my back to him, pretending I could not feel the distance growing wider. The exposure did not happen the way I imagined. There was no confrontation. No shouting. No dramatic scene. It happened quietly, the way most devastating things do. One afternoon, I came home to find my clothes folded neatly on the bed. Not packed. Just folded. My phone was charging on the nightstand. Ethan was sitting on the edge of the bed, his shoulders slumped forward. He had seen a message. I did not need him to say it. I could see it in his eyes. They were red, not from anger, but from holding back something heavier. He did not raise his voice. He did not accuse me. He told me he knew, and that was all. His calmness made the room feel too small to breathe in. In that moment, every lie I had told myself collapsed. I tried to explain without really explaining. I spoke in fragments, careful not to fully expose how deep the betrayal went. I minimized. I justified. I protected myself when I should have been honest. Ethan listened without interrupting. His silence was devastating. It felt like standing in front of a mirror that showed me exactly who I had become. Ryan reacted differently. When I told him that my husband knew, his demeanor changed completely. The tenderness disappeared. The excitement faded. He told me he did not sign up for consequences. He reminded me of everything I had risked. In his voice, I heard something ugly. Not love. Not concern. Just self-preservation. The man I had nearly destroyed my marriage for revealed himself fully, and there was nothing romantic about it. That realization shattered me. I had given so much of myself to someone who could walk away without looking back. Meanwhile, Ethan was still there, still wounded, still choosing not to abandon me immediately. That contrast crushed me under the weight of my own choices. The house felt different after that. Ethan did not touch me. He did not sleep in another room, but the space between us was undeniable. He moved carefully around me, as if afraid of saying the wrong thing. I wanted him to yell. I wanted him to explode. I wanted him to punish me in a way that matched my guilt. Instead, he grieved quietly. One night, unable to carry the weight any longer, I told him everything. I did not spare details. I did not soften the truth. I confessed the emotional betrayal, the physical betrayal, the lies layered on top of lies. I watched his face change as each truth landed. I watched the man I loved absorb pain he did not deserve. When I finished, I told him I would understand if he wanted a divorce. I told him I did not expect forgiveness. He did not answer right away. He stood up and left the room, leaving me alone with the wreckage of my honesty. I sat on the bed shaking, finally understanding the full cost of what I had done. I had not just broken vows. I had broken trust, safety, and the quiet confidence he once had in us. That night, I slept alone for the first time in years. I expected a decision in the morning. Papers. Distance. An ending. Instead, Ethan came back into the room before dawn. He sat beside me and told me he needed time. He told me he was hurt beyond words, but he was not ready to walk away yet. His voice broke when he said it, and that was when I truly fell apart. I had damaged the one person who loved me without conditions. And the worst part was knowing that no apology could ever undo what I had already done. The days after my confession felt unreal, like I was moving through a life that no longer belonged to me. Time slowed down inside our house. Every sound felt louder. Every silence felt heavier. Ethan did not leave. He did not threaten me with lawyers or ultimatums. He stayed, and somehow that was harder to endure than abandonment would have been. We existed in the same space but lived in different emotional worlds. Ethan spoke less than ever. When he did, his words were careful, measured, as if he was afraid that too much honesty might shatter what little remained between us. I watched him from across rooms, studying the man I had wounded. His shoulders carried a weight they never had before. His eyes no longer met mine easily. The trust that once lived there had vanished, replaced by uncertainty and quiet pain. I wanted to reach for him. I wanted to be held. I wanted reassurance. I did not deserve any of it, and I knew that. Every morning, I woke up with regret pressing against my ribs. The fantasy that once consumed me was gone, replaced by clarity that came too late. Ryan had faded into silence completely. No apologies. No remorse. Just absence. That alone revealed how disposable I had been to him. The affair that once felt intoxicating now looked small and pathetic under the light of truth. Ethan suggested counseling. The way he said it told me everything. This was not a guarantee of reconciliation. It was an attempt to understand whether there was anything left worth saving. I agreed immediately, not because I believed I deserved another chance, but because I needed to face what I had done without hiding behind excuses. Therapy stripped me bare. I had to confront the parts of myself I ignored for years. My need for validation. My fear of being ordinary. My inability to communicate dissatisfaction without seeking escape. None of those reasons justified my betrayal, but they explained the cracks I chose not to repair. I learned that my pain did not give me permission to create pain in someone else. Ethan attended sessions quietly. When he spoke, his words were slow and deliberate. He talked about trust as if it were a living thing that had been injured. He talked about how safe he once felt loving me, and how that safety was gone. Listening to him describe the damage I caused was unbearable. I cried more in those sessions than I had in years. At home, we started over in the smallest ways. We slept in the same bed again, but without intimacy. No expectations. No pressure. Just presence. Some nights, he turned away from me. Other nights, he stayed still, allowing the space to exist without rejection. I learned that rebuilding trust was not about grand gestures. It was about consistency. Transparency. Patience. I gave him access to everything. My phone. My schedule. My whereabouts. Not because he demanded it, but because I needed to remove every shadow I once hid in. I answered his questions honestly, even when the truth embarrassed me. I accepted his anger when it surfaced. I accepted his silence when words failed him. One evening, months into this slow process, Ethan finally broke down. He told me how deeply my betrayal had altered the way he saw himself. How it made him question his worth, his masculinity, his adequacy as a husband. Hearing that shattered something inside me. I had not only hurt him emotionally. I had shaken his identity. I held him while he cried, understanding for the first time that forgiveness does not erase trauma. The turning point came quietly. There was no dramatic declaration. No sudden embrace. One night, after a long conversation filled with honesty and tears, Ethan reached for my hand. That simple gesture carried more weight than any passionate reunion could have. It told me that despite everything, he was still willing to try. Our intimacy returned slowly, cautiously. It was not the fiery passion of our early years. It was something deeper. More vulnerable. Every touch carried intention. Every kiss held history. I felt the gravity of his forgiveness in those moments, and it humbled me in ways I had never experienced before. Loving him again meant honoring him in ways I failed to before. Forgiveness did not come all at once. There were setbacks. Triggers. Days when Ethan pulled away without explanation. Days when my shame resurfaced and threatened to drown me. But we kept choosing honesty. We kept choosing each other, even when it was uncomfortable. I learned that love is not proven in perfection, but in endurance. Ethan did not forgive me because the betrayal was small. He forgave me because his love was stronger than my worst mistake. That kind of love is not loud. It does not announce itself. It shows up daily, wounded but willing. Today, our marriage looks different. It is slower. More intentional. Built on truth instead of assumptions. I no longer chase validation outside my home. I communicate my needs without escaping responsibility. I understand now that attention without commitment is empty, and desire without integrity destroys everything in its path. I hurt him the worst way a wife can hurt her husband. I broke his trust. I shattered his sense of safety. I nearly lost the man who loved me with quiet devotion. And yet, he stayed. Not because I deserved it, but because he believed in the possibility of redemption. This is not a story that glorifies betrayal. It is a confession. A warning. And a testament to a kind of love that survives what it should not have to. If there is one truth I carry with me now, it is this: love does not always leave when it is betrayed, but it never forgets. It changes, it scars, and if nurtured with honesty and humility, it can still choose to stay. I live every day knowing that his forgiveness is a gift I must honor for the rest of my life.